All right, so we're back, and today we're going to be looking at something that I think a lot of people can relate to. Those first day jitters
Yeah.
when you start a new job, and I think even more so if you're doing it in a new language or a language that you're not 100% comfortable with.
Oh, absolutely.
And we're going to be using as our source material an episode of Real English Talk podcast, and they use a fictional story to kind of illustrate some of the challenges that you might face when you start a new job.
Okay.
So the scenario here is we have a young lady named Anna who is about to start as a sales executive at a company called Tip Top Trading.
Okay.
And she really wants to make a good first impression.
Right.
I think that's something we all
still
want to
do.
be.
Yeah, it's that kind of universal thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
That blend of excitement and a little bit of anxiety about wanting to make sure you put your best foot forward.
Exactly.
Because first impressions do matter. And especially in a professional environment where clear communication and polite communication can really set the tone for your future interactions.
Yeah, and actually, the podcast gives 5 specific phrases that Anna uses to introduce herself, and they're all very simple and very clear and very professional.
Okay.
Things like, hello, I don't think we've met. Or, you must be person's name, I've just joined the team.
Right.
So, just those...
Yeah, very simple and straightforward.
Exactly, just those polite phrases.
Yeah, I like that they actually put them into practice in the podcast.
Yeah.
Because it's not just a list of here are some useful phrases.
Right.
It's actually showing you
Right.
how to use those phrases in those situations.
Exactly, and it makes it more memorable for the listener because you're actually hearing it used in a scenario.
Absolutely.
And speaking of scenarios,
Yes.
one of the things I found very interesting is Anna is trying to introduce herself to Tom, who is the senior account manager at this company.
Okay.
And it doesn't go quite as planned because Tom is completely preoccupied with some deal that he's working on.
Oh, right.
And kind of just brushes her off.
Oh, so he's not really paying attention to her.
He's not really paying attention. He's just like, yeah, whatever.
Oh, that's a challenge, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
it's like, okay, I'm trying to be polite and introduce myself,
Yeah.
but the other person is just not really there.
Yeah. It's like, how many times have we been in that situation
Oh, I know
where
exactly.
you're trying to connect with someone and they're just not present?
Absolutely. It's so common in the workplace.
But the interesting thing is, Anna doesn't give up.
Oh, good for her.
She politely persists and manages to introduce herself, even though he's distracted.
So that's a good example of professional etiquette, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
It's like, okay, even though this person isn't really giving me the time of day, I'm still going to be professional.
Yeah.
I'm still going to make that effort.
Exactly. And I think that's really important.
Yeah. It shows a level of social awareness as well.
Yeah.
To understand that maybe this person is just having a busy day, but I'm still going to make sure that I introduce myself properly.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
so, she kind of gets over that hurdle and
Yeah.
she thinks, okay, great. I've introduced myself to this guy.
Right.
And then he throws out this phrase.
Okay.
He says, lunch tomorrow at 12:30. And this is where the episode gets really interesting.
Oh.
Because for Anna, she's new to this country. She's new to this culture.
Yeah.
Lunch means one thing,
Okay.
which is homemade spring rolls and crispy duck.
Oh, wow. She's going all out.
She's going to make a good first impression.
Yeah.
So
she's taking it literally
Yeah.
that he's inviting her for lunch at her place or his place.
Yeah, exactly. She assumes that he's inviting her to her apartment
Okay.
and that she's going to prepare this elaborate meal.
Right.
But as the podcast points out, that phrase, do lunch or lunch tomorrow, can mean something totally different.
Yeah, that's the thing about language, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's so context dependent and so culturally dependent.
Mm-hmm.
So what might be a very straightforward invitation in one culture
Yeah,
can be completely misinterpreted in another.
exactly. And
Yeah.
this is where the episode starts to really highlight the importance of cultural awareness.
Absolutely.
Because what seems like a simple phrase
Yeah.
can have totally different meanings depending on where you are and who you're talking to.
Yeah, and I think the beauty of this episode is that it shows how this misunderstanding
Right.
actually leads to a positive outcome.
It does.
So instead of it being a kind of awkward situation where she brings all this food
Right.
and he's expecting to go out to a restaurant,
Right.
they actually end up having a shared office picnic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which is such a great
Yeah.
outcome.
It's a lovely way to turn a potential faux pas
Yeah.
into a really nice bonding experience.
Exactly. And I think that's a fantastic takeaway for our listeners is, it's not always about avoiding mistakes.
Yeah.
It's about how you respond to those mistakes and how you can actually turn them into a positive.
Yeah. It's that flexibility and that ability to kind of go with the flow
Yeah.
and laugh at yourself a little bit sometimes.
Exactly. And, I love that because it's like, it's not about being perfect.
Yeah,
It's about being human.
absolutely.
And I think that's such a refreshing perspective.
Yeah, and it reminds us that sometimes those unexpected situations
Yeah.
can lead to the most memorable and enjoyable experiences.
Absolutely. So we've seen how Anna's tackled introductions. She's dealt with a distracted colleague.
Mm-hmm.
She's turned a cultural misunderstanding into a positive experience.
Yeah.
But the episode goes even deeper
Okay.
into the nuances of workplace communication and cultural awareness. So let's keep going. So we're back, and I'm still thinking about that lunch situation with Anna.
Mm-hmm.
It just goes to show how much we rely on context
It does, yeah.
and shared understanding.
It's like the tip of the iceberg, really, when
Yeah.
you think about all the unspoken rules and cultural nuances that we navigate every single day.
Especially in a professional setting, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Where you're trying to make a good impression.
Yeah, yeah, and you want to make sure that you come across in the right way.
Exactly. And I remember when I first started working abroad,
Mm-hmm.
I was constantly second-guessing myself.
Oh, yeah.
Like, am I saying the right thing?
Total.
Am I using the right tone?
Yeah.
It's like,
It's so relatable, I think, for anyone who's been in that situation of working in a different culture
yeah.
where you're not completely familiar with all the unspoken rules.
Yeah, and the podcast actually does a great job of kind of highlighting that challenge.
does, yeah.
Like, it's not just about learning the language. It's about understanding those subtle cues.
Exactly.
Like how direct you can be,
Mm-hmm.
how much small talk is expected.
Yeah.
Even things like eye contact
Yeah.
and personal space.
It's a whole other layer of communication, isn't it?
It is.
That goes beyond the words themselves.
Yeah. And I think the podcast really emphasizes the importance of flexibility
Oh, absolutely.
and a willingness to learn from your mistakes.
Yeah.
And I love how Anna, even though she's initially confused,
Right.
she kind of embraces the situation
She does.
with grace and humor.
Yeah.
And it kind of turns this potential faux pas
Right.
into a bonding experience.
Yeah. And it's a reminder, isn't it?
Yeah.
That mistakes are inevitable,
Yeah.
especially when you're in a new environment.
Especially in a new environment.
But it's how we respond to them
yeah.
that really defines us.
Makes me think, all those times that I've maybe misjudged a situation or said the wrong thing,
Mm-hmm.
instead of getting defensive or embarrassed,
Yeah.
what if I tried to see it as an opportunity to learn
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
connect with the other person?
That's such a powerful shift in perspective,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah.
To see those mistakes as opportunities for growth and
Yeah.
understanding.
And the podcast also talks about active listening and how important that is
Oh, it's crucial, isn't it?
in this whole process.
It is.
It's not just about speaking clearly.
Right.
It's about paying attention to the other person's cues,
Absolutely.
both verbal and nonverbal.
Yeah, it's like tuning into a different frequency almost.
Yeah.
Becoming more aware of those subtle shifts in tone,
Yeah.
body language, facial expression.
It's like we're constantly reading between the lines,
Yeah,
aren't we?
yeah.
Trying to figure out what's really being said.
Yeah, and that's especially important
Yeah.
when you're interacting with people from different cultures.
Yeah, absolutely. Because
Those unspoken rules and expectations can vary so widely.
exactly, like a gesture.
Yeah,
That might be totally fine in one culture,
right.
could be considered rude
Yeah.
or offensive in another.
Yeah, so being observant
Mhm.
and paying attention to how others communicate
Yeah,
is really crucial in those situations.
like becoming a workplace anthropologist.
Exactly, yeah.
Just observing those patterns of behavior, those
Mhm.
unwritten codes of conduct.
Yeah, and the more you observe, the more you'll learn, and the more
Mhm.
confident you'll become
Yeah,
in navigating those complex social dynamics.
and the key takeaway here, I think, is that
Yeah,
everyone makes mistakes.
they do.
It's part of the learning process.
Absolutely.
But it's about approaching those situations
Yeah.
with an open mind,
Yeah.
a willingness to learn.
And maybe even a little bit of humor.
Yeah.
Because as Anna's experience shows,
Yeah.
sometimes those awkward moments
Mm-hmm.
can lead to the most unexpected
Yeah.
and delightful outcomes.
And delightful outcomes. Okay, so we've talked about cultural awareness, the importance of active listening,
Mm-hmm.
and how to kind of embrace those mistakes.
Yeah.
But let's go back to Anna's interaction with Tom,
Yeah.
the distracted senior account manager.
Right.
What can we learn from her persistence?
Well, I think it's a great example of how professional etiquette
Yep.
goes beyond just knowing the right phrases.
Yeah.
It's about taking the initiative even when someone seems unapproachable
Yeah.
and handling the situations with poise
Right.
and resilience.
Exactly. And I think that's such a valuable takeaway for our listeners,
It is.
especially,
Especially in a competitive work environment.
yeah, in a competitive work environment
Yeah, where you need to make sure that you're seen and heard
yeah.
and you're making those connections.
And I think her determination to make a good first impression, despite the obstacles,
Yeah.
really speaks volumes about her character
It does, yeah.
and her commitment to success.
And it's a reminder that sometimes you have to put yourself out there,
Yeah.
even if it feels a bit awkward,
Yeah.
and trust that those efforts will eventually pay off.
And sometimes it's not about those grand gestures
Right.
or, dazzling presentations.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just about being present, being polite, showing a genuine interest in others.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here,
We have.
from cultural nuances to active listening
Yeah.
to the importance of persistence. But there's one more crucial element
Okay.
that Anna's story highlights. We're back and ready to wrap up our deep dive.
Yeah.
I'm really struck by how much we can learn from Anna's story.
Me too. And one thing that keeps coming back to me is just how important observation is.
Yeah, like she really was paying attention,
She wasn't just going through the motions, she was actively watching and learning from her colleagues.
picking up on all those little things.
Yeah, like these little cues, those unwritten rules of the workplace.
Almost like she was a workplace anthropologist.
Exactly, taking notes on everything.
Yeah, the dress code,
Yeah.
the coffee break rituals, how people interact with each other.
And that kind of skill, that observational skill, is so valuable.
Yeah, especially in a new job and a new culture.
It's about being attuned to the nuances of communication.
Yeah, going beyond just the words themselves.
Understanding those unspoken expectations, those dynamics that really shape the work environment.
It takes a conscious effort, though, doesn't it?
It does.
It's not just about showing up and doing your tasks.
Yeah, you have to be present.
You really have to pay attention.
Engage with your surroundings.
Like you're watching a play unfold.
Yeah. And the more you observe, the more you'll pick up on those cues.
And those cues can really help you navigate the workplace more effectively.
It's almost like learning a secret language.
It is.
Understanding those unwritten rules.
Right, and that can really make a difference.
You can make or break your success.
It's like when in Rome, do as the Romans do.
Exactly. But it goes even deeper than that.
Yeah, it's not just about mimicking.
It's about understanding the why behind the behavior.
Yeah, the cultural values
The beliefs.
that shape those actions.
It's about moving beyond those superficial observations to a much deeper understanding of the culture.
And that takes time, doesn't it?
It does.
And patience.
And a willingness to ask questions.
Yeah, and to learn from the people around you.
Absolutely.
It also requires humility, I think.
Oh, totally.
Admitting that we don't know everything.
But we're constantly learning.
Adapting.
Right.
And, Anna's story really highlights this.
It does.
Because even though she has these misunderstandings, she approaches each situation with an open mind,
She does.
a sense of humor.
And a willingness to learn from those mistakes.
And ultimately, that's what helps her succeed.
It is. She turns those mistakes into stepping stones.
Yeah, she uses them to understand the culture better.
Build those relationships with her colleagues.
Okay, so let's recap.
Okay.
What are the key takeaways here?
All right.
First, clear and polite communication.
Especially those introductions.
Yes, those first impressions matter.
So important.
Remember those phrases.
Hello, I don't think we've met.
You must be. Person's name.
Simple, but effective.
But as we saw with Anna and Tom, sometimes you need to be persistent.
Yeah, he wasn't exactly the most welcoming.
And you have to be adaptable.
Oh, absolutely.
But always with a sense of humor.
Because even when things go wrong,
Yeah, a little laughter can go a long way.
it can really diffuse the tension.
Turn that awkward situation into a positive one.
And that brings us to cultural awareness.
So important, even if your English is fluent.
It's about understanding those nuances.
How language is used in different contexts.
Yeah, those unspoken rules.
Like with the do lunch situation.
A classic example.
What's considered a simple invitation in one culture.
Could be totally different in another.
So be mindful of those differences.
Be flexible.
Be willing to learn.
And of course, observation.
Anna was a pro at that,
She was taking it all in.
paying attention to those unspoken rules,
Yeah.
the social dynamics, the cultural cues,
It all helps you navigate that workplace more effectively.
build stronger relationships.
Absolutely.
So as we wrap up,
Yeah.
here's something to think about.
Okay.
Yes, those polite phrases, Those cultural norms are essential.
But don't underestimate the power of flexibility.
That sense of humor.
That willingness to learn from your experiences.
Embrace the unexpected.
Don't be afraid to make mistakes.
Keep observing.
Keep learning.
Keep growing.
And remember, those first-day jitters are normal.
Everyone feels them.
The key is to approach new experiences with an open mind.
That curious spirit.
And a willingness to step outside that comfort zone.
Because that's where the real learning happens.
That's where the magic is.
Until next time, happy communicating.